Ben Cotton here from the Captain's Coffee at thecaptainscoffee.com, and we're going to do another tasting video today, just talking about what to expect from different flavors in different regions around the world where coffee is grown. And we did a video a couple of weeks ago that you might want to check out too if you haven't seen it yet, about describing flavor, some of the words we use, just trying to help you gain a real basic knowledge of what to taste and what to list the taste for when you drink coffee, or really any food for that matter. Gave you some good terms to think about. Also trying to help you think about how to communicate about coffee flavor in a way that's helpful, so we all kind of use the same vocabulary. That's pretty helpful, both when you're talking to each other about coffee, but also when you might call in to me and ask me to recommend a coffee. This kind of thing helps us a lot when we're communicating. So that's a good video to check out. This video is a little bit of a follow-up to that, where we're going to look at different regions and kind of talk about the generalities we can make over what to expect from different flavors in different regions. Now, this is very general. There's going to be a lot of exceptions to this, obviously, as you get down to specific countries within those regions, even specific farms, mountain ranges, that kind of thing. You get a much more narrow, exceptional kind of look at the individual coffees. We're not going to do that. We're going to keep things at a high level in this video just to give you a general idea, because what I found when I was first getting into coffee, this was probably the most helpful thing that I first learned, is kind of what to expect from different regions. It really helped me a lot when I was tasting coffees and comparing coffees with each other. Having some expectation of what I was going to taste was really helpful, but also when it comes to picking out a coffee to buy for yourself that you haven't tasted yet, this is really going to help you a lot in making those kinds of decisions as well. And so I think this is going to be a helpful video. So first, let's just look at what those three regions are. We're going to look at the map behind me here, where we've got a good view of different coffees and where they come from around the world, and I'll show you what those regions are. Then I'll be back in front of the camera to talk about flavors. Okay, so we've got a world map here on the wall of the warehouse where we ship your coffee, and on it we have placed pins where in every place that we sell coffee from or have in the past. And so I thought it might be helpful, before we talk about regional flavors, might talk about where these regions are, so you have an idea of where they are on the map, so that you can group them together in your head as you're ordering coffee or tasting coffee. So first here we have, you'll notice the first thing you should look at is all, or I won't say all, there are a couple of exceptions like Australia, but for the most part, all coffee, Arabica coffee, is grown around the equator. And it's grown at high altitude, so you can need two things, really, is mountains, high mountains, and to be close to the equator to grow really good, high-quality Arabica beans. And so you'll notice that, first of all, just a strip right here across the equator, that's where all the coffees tend to be. And then you'll notice that they're grouped together really in three different growing regions. First, you've got Central and South America, so right down in the southern Mexico, you'll see the pins in there, all the way down into Brazil, not too far down past the center of Brazil, central Brazil. So you're down to Rio de Janeiro, is about as far south as you go. That's Central and South America coffees. And then over here, in the middle of the map, you've got the Middle East. Yemen is over there, and then your African coffees. Now there are other places that grow coffee there, like the Congo, but we have yet to find a really great Congo coffee. But there is coffee grown in the Congo and some other places. Africa is really the birthplace of coffee, Africa and Yemen. So there's your second region, Africa and the Middle East, and then right next to that you've got Indonesia. Over here, India, down into these Indonesian islands where so many great coffees come from, Sumatra, Sulawesi, Flores, all of those coffees come from Indonesia. And so those are your three regions, and what we're going to find is that you can actually expect a certain grouping of flavors from each region. Okay, so now that you've got a good idea of what the different regions are and where they're located on the map, let's talk about each region and what to expect from them flavor-wise. First, you've got Central and South America. Generally speaking, like I said, keep in mind these are major generalizations, but they're still helpful. You've got Central and South American coffees tend to be nuttier. Think like, peanuts, walnuts, that kind of thing, almonds, kind of that nutty flavor. They tend to be very floral. That's a difficult to describe taste, but when you think about flowers and what would a flower or the aroma of a flower taste like, that's what we mean by floral. Blooming kind of a flavor. Central South American coffees tend to be light to medium-bodied coffees, very mild, toned down, very balanced coffees. This is why Central South American coffees like Colombians, Costa Rican coffees tend to be very popular with people who are new to coffee and aren't used to the more bold flavors that you get when coffee is very fresh. Has a wide appeal. Most Central South American coffees, it's the kind of thing you would serve a guest that came over for dinner that is not really a big coffee drinker. But that's not to say they're bad coffees. Don't get the wrong impression. Especially some of my favorite coffees come from Costa Rica, personally. And so it doesn't mean they're bad. It just means they're mild. We talked about boldness and that kind of stuff in the other video. So you're looking for nutty, floral, light to medium body coffees, pretty high acidity, not really high. We're going to talk about African coffees in a minute. Those tend to have a real high acidity, but they're sort of citrusy is the word that you'll see me use quite a lot. Think about grapefruit, oranges, that kind of thing, and the acidity that you taste when you eat a grapefruit. That kind of acidity, it's very pleasant. Not really strong, but it is acidic. They're kind of a zingy, that's a made-up word, I know. Zingy kind of a coffee. It's got a nice bite to it. Those are Central South American coffees, but they tend to be very balanced. Meaning they don't have one characteristic doesn't kind of outweigh the others. They're very balanced and mild to medium-bodied coffees. Okay, so that's Central and South America. Second, we've got Middle East and Africa. Like I said, Middle East, Yemen coffees, they qualify, I think, to be lumped together with African coffees, but it is very unique. But Middle East and African coffees, you can expect high acidity, a nice bite in the back of the throat. It's one of the things people love about a good Kenyan or Ethiopian coffee. Medium-bodied, sometimes you'll get African coffee that might qualify as a heavy-bodied coffee, but that's kind of rare. You're not going to get light-bodied coffees. Medium-bodied, kind of right in the middle. Much more floral than your Central and South American coffees. Okay, so if you'll notice, as you move across the map, you get similar characteristics, but they're more intense. So both Central and South American coffees and Kenyans tend to be floral, but the Kenyan, Ethiopians, African coffees are much more so, okay? They tend to be fruity, kind of like a dry wine or a red wine. You'll see when I describe a lot of African coffees, I'll say it's a wine-toned coffee, or like a dry wine or a red wine, or it's fruity, but not in a really sweet kind of, or overly sweet way like a jam or a jelly or a syrup would be. It's fruity like a dry wine might be. That's how Kenyan coffees tend to come. And then all the way over into Indonesia, you get the most drastic difference in Indonesia, India, Indonesia, those parts of the world. Very earthy. Some people will use the word forest floor. Sometimes we hear that phrase. Earthy, like dirt, but not in a bad way. As we get, some of these words have strange connotations to some people. When I say earthy, I don't mean like gross, like you're licking the ground. I mean like earthy, as in like a basey coffee. So earthy, very herbal. Think of like an herb garden and the flavors you get out of an herb garden. So we're not talking sweet, bright, acidic anymore. We're talking about very earthy, very herbal. spicy. In fact, a lot of times in Indonesia, coffees are grown next to or nearby black pepper farms. And so you get a kind of a spiciness. So think about black pepper. Black pepper is a great way to describe a lot of Sumatran coffees, Indonesian coffees. So spicy, herbal, earthy, low acidity as compared to your Kenyans, your African coffees and your Central South American coffees, all the way over in Indonesia, very low acidity and very high, heavy body. So if you were going to compare two coffees kind of at drastic extremes, you might take a Costa Rican or a Colombian or even a Brazilian coffee and roast it along with like a Sumatra Mandolin coffee, which is high body, low acidity, and a Colombian that is low body, high acidity, and you drink those next to each other, you're going to taste dramatic differences, and those are really regional differences. And so that kind of thing is going to help you, and as you learn to kind of compare and contrast coffees, is I would suggest actually maybe the next time you order coffee, instead of just ordering the stuff you always order, think about regions and experiment. Buy a pound of a good Central South American coffee and a pound of good Indonesian coffee, something like Sumatra Mandolin, Sumatra Gayo, Permata Gayo, or Sulawesi Toraja, one of those coffees, and then compare it to some from a completely different region, and you're going to taste the differences, and it's going to really help you, I think. It'll help you appreciate both, actually. So that's kind of an overview of the different regions. Feel free to ask questions. Another thing that was asked on Facebook with the last video is kind of relating coffee flavors to music, which is a great analogy, or I guess metaphor, for tasting coffee. Like and sometimes you'll see me do that. We'll say this is a very bassy coffee. There's a lot of bass in it. And what I'm talking about is that earthiness and that heavy body like you get in a Sumatran coffee versus a very trebly coffee like you get in Central South America. So that's one way to talk about coffee that's pretty helpful. So keep the questions coming, and I hope this was helpful to you. And next time you order, think about this stuff, and pick some coffees from different regions and see what you like. Some people lean towards certain regions that they like, and other people like to pick from all three. And I think that's the best way, is because you get some comparing and contrasting going on, which is always educational for your palate. So we'll see you next time. Thanks.